Hello, good morning, and welcome to Newsfile. This is your most authoritative news analysis platform. Global corruption score. We want to understand why Ghana shows zero improvement. Yes, zero improvement in 4 years. That's what President Akufo-Addo has superintended over. John Maham's worst has been his best, if you like, for this long. Why is that so? Elections, can they be held in November? The EC thinks so. Some of the parties agree that this is doable. Hold it in November, but why? Let's understand the reasons. Plus, 11 reasons the NDC opposes the change now in 2024. They say the EC is too late in the day in introducing this discussion. There was a National Economic Summit yesterday, and it was under the auspices of the Movement for Change. Kyerematen's Movement for Change. He is rallying non-partisan expertise for transformation of Ghana's economy. He says we should not be this debt-ridden, so broke we can't feed ourselves. We'll check with him how exactly this will produce the solution to Ghana's economic woes. I'm Samson, Lardy, Anyenini. We'll be right back to deal with the vexed matters. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. And today, Samson's take. Ghana's plane can leave the tarmac. Kwame Pianim. That's all I say. Watch this.
That he put in place. You mentioned textiles and other things that can be done in this country. It has been done before. We used to even assemble televisions and radios in this country. Nkrumah sent students outside to study and come and build this nation. Just like the Chinese have learned. Indeed, at a certain time in Europe, you will come across a Chinese who has nothing in his pocket, but he's studying. And in less than 50 years, look at where they are. We have our aircraft still on the tarmac. Governments have been coming, and the aircraft is at the same place. I just want to find out from you, after 62 years, do you think that aircraft can take off?
Thank you, Dr. Captain Nyahu Tamaklu. My classmate from Nsawam prison. Nyahu, when we reimagine, we can do it. You remember, we're in prison, we couldn't go out to hospital. Nkrumah built in Nsawam prison, built a hospital to it. I went to Nyahu and I said, Nyahu, we are going to refurbish this hospital for us. He said, Kwame, no. I mean, when we are in prison, you feel angry. I said, Nyahu, if we don't look after ourselves here, we may die here. He said, what do you want? I said, I want you to put on your medical suit. You're a trained doctor. I got the Catholic sisters. We refurbished the Nsawam prison hospital. They gave us drugs. Now, every morning, we put on a suit, go there, not only looking after the prisoners, by looking at the prison officers. We did it. The prison has farms, idle land. I say, you are not feeding us well. 200 acres land. We expanded it to almost 500, 600 acres. We're growing maize, vegetables. We had a poultry farm that was selling birds to Kingsway and to Ghana Airways. The prisoners, some of them have learned how to prepare the chicken. They prepare the chicken inside, put that thing inside, and we sell it. Oven ready. My wife will bring us pepper, ingredients, and I give it to some of the people and say, cook it for those in the condemned prisons. So they take the neck, the legs, the insides, and cook it for the prisoners. We did it. We set up even a bank account. By the time we were living there, we had almost about $500,000 in the bank account of the prison farms in Nsawam. When we were transferred to Anumabo, we got the Catholic sisters. They gave us money. We bought 2 boats. 3 a.m. in the morning, the prison officer would take about 10 inmates to go fishing. They bring the fish, we take 2 crates and feed the prisoners. We sell the rest. Within 6 months, we're able to repay. It can be done once we put our human mind to it. Now that we've had all these problems behind us, Nyaho, I promise you, with the same commitment and passion. What is happening in Ghana now? Things are happening. There are young women, young men doing software. All we need is that the software, the government uses them. We apply them here, then we can sell it to others. What I call governance softwares. Except that the Wi-Fi system has to be working. Government can provide infrastructure. But if Ghanaians decide, after all, we're not put in this place at the juncture of the meridian and the equator for nothing. Look at Ghanaians. All over the world, the UN system, the first staff member to become Secretary General of the UN, Kofi Annan, he's my age group, the 1957-year group. All across Ghana, we call ourselves the independence class of 1957. Kufuor is our age group. The sky was not even the limit. And I want to inspire everybody here. Put your selfishness aside. You sang Yanara Assassini. The wealth that Ifrimamu was able to coin, no original tree-speaking person can put it.
That's Kwame Pianim. He spoke at the UPSA annual leadership lecture just in December. I have nothing useful to add. Ghana's plane must leave the tarmac. I return shortly to find out, coincidentally, I have Alan Kyerematen for our first segment of Newsfile this morning. Is he the man who will get our plane take off from the tarmac? We'll be right back.
After the unsuccessful attempt by the Professor Albert Edubuahi to win the general elections, the membership of the Young Executive Forum nominated me to contest the 1996 presidential primaries alongside leading personalities such as Professor Edubuahi, Mr. J. Kufuor, Dr. Jani Selby, Dr. Kwame Safodu, Mr. J.H. Mensah, and Dr. Jones Oforiatta. I was prevailed at that time upon by some senior members of the party, in particular, Mr. Akenten Apiamenka and Mr. Stephen Kreku, both of blessed memory, to sacrifice the opportunity to contest for the leadership of the party and rather support my senior colleague aspirants. From 1996 to 2000, I played a leading role in supporting the bid of the then candidate J.A. Kufuor to win the general elections and become president of the Republic of Ghana in 2001. After refusing appointment as a cabinet minister in the aftermath of the elections, the president then persuaded me to become MPP's first ambassador to the United States of America, a position I served with distinction. I was subsequently appointed in 2003 as Minister for Trade and Industry and Presidential Special Initiatives to implement a new paradigm of economic development, which I had introduced in 2001 on the assumption of office by President Kufuor. Between 2003 and 2007, I led the government's program for enhancing private sector development and ushering a golden age of business in Ghana. In 2007, I joined a distinguished group of 17 presidential aspirants to contest in the presidential primaries of the MPP. In that election, under very strange circumstances, the electoral process was truncated on the day of the election on account of accusations leveled against me of influencing the course of the elections. This strategy was designed to create disfavor against me in an attempt to diminish my popularity and the massive support I enjoyed amongst the rank and file of the grassroots of the party. In spite of this unfortunate occurrence, however, when the votes were finally counted, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo came first and I was the runner-up. According to the rules of the electoral process at that time, the two of us were programmed for a second-round ballot. It was in response to this development that I made my landmark declaration that to avoid a further deterioration of peace in an already divided party, I would make the supreme political sacrifice not to contest the runoff, but rather support my senior brother, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, to contest as the flag bearer for MPP. To contest as the flag bearer for MPP in the 2008 general elections. Despite the sacrifice I made to unite the party, as referred to above, there were very serious post-primary attacks on my supporters all over the country and an open show of hostility. Some of my supporters were victims of brutalities and continue to bear the scars of that treatment. I made several representations to the then leadership of the party, drawing their attention to the rancorous and divisive behavior of some elements in the party. Regrettably, however, my representations went unheeded. As a consequence, I gave notice of my decision to resign from the party in protest against the blatant alienation of my supporters, orchestrated by elements aligned to the leadership of the party at that time. The protests and reactions from the rank and file of the party at that time from all over the country compelled the then chairman of the party to constitute a reconciliation committee chaired by the then immediate past chairman of the party, Ambassador Samuel Odoi Sykes. The committee upheld all my submissions and prevailed upon me to rescind my decision to resign, which I did, with a firm promise to address all the contentious issues I had raised in my notice of resignation. And because government's most powerful tool is policy making, all I needed to do, it doesn't cost money, it's just brain power, was to put together an automobile vehicle assembly policy. That was all. I didn't need to borrow to bring resources into the country, just policy. And because of the quality of the policy, within a matter of 1.5 years, we have 5 out of the 6 global auto companies all assembling vehicles in Ghana. I'm going to prepare the budget for 2025 before the elections. Because remember, with our current situation, we have literally exited ourselves out of the international capital markets. With the type of domestic debt exchange program that we executed, we have also exited ourselves from the domestic market. So the only window available for us is private, domestic, and foreign capital. And that is why we have to build a strong partnership with the private sector.
I was working somewhere and then people were engaged in a program and they were talking on politics. And then they mentioned Honorable's name. And then because I know him personally, I stood and I was listening. And they said, Honorable is too gentle to be a politician. It's too gentle to be a politician. Because all those people in politics are dirty people. And I said, no. Then I said, the right people to be in politics are the people who are needy. Because if you give us bad policy, we'll have a bad economy. And we thank God we have such a person like this.
The Minister of Finance has no right to be taking credit for the marginal improvements that we are seeing in the economy.
Welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile we put Ghana first. So as you know, he resigned from the NPP in January, on the 5th of January 2023 as trade minister, not as a member of the party. And then he left the party on the 25th of September and declared his intention to run for presidency as independent candidate on the vehicle Movement for Change. The movement has mobilized shocking crowds of officers and members across the country. Will that turn into real votes for him? That's what we live to see. He's now mobilizing bipartisan expertise for a national development plan to move Ghana from poverty to prosperity. A transformation he firmly believes is not possible under the NPP, and I guess not under the NDC either. Good morning and welcome to Newsfile.
Thank you, Samson.
So far,
you look good in your
thank you,
African
sir.
way.
Thank you, sir. And you're looking very good too, sir.
Thank you.
And for our radio listeners, my guest is the Honorable Alan Kojo, Kyerematen, presidential candidate and former Minister for Trade and Industry. So, yesterday there was a national economic summit. We're interested. Tell us about this summit.
Thank you very much, Samson. It is obvious, at least to me, but hopefully a lot more Ghanaians, that what this country has been yearning for is a decent conversation on how to fix our economy. We have many challenges, there's no doubt about that. But I think there's consensus in this country that the most difficult challenge confronting us as a nation is our economy in crisis. Now, regrettably, the government has failed to respond to this desire of Ghanaians to bring all of us together to think about how we move this country forward. Look, I'm a politician, and I'm fighting for power. But it is true that I'm also fighting for a cause. And that cause is to bring economic prosperity to our country.
You have said that so many times.
And it therefore makes sense that I make a contribution in trying to mobilize the collective talents of this country, start thinking about how we fix our economy. I don't need to wait for the government to do it. It would have been useful if the government had taken that lead.
Right. But we know...
And that's the gap that I sought to fill.
Right. And you are absolutely right that Ghanaians are looking for a conversation about bread and butter, how their livelihoods can be improved. And many say this is why Dr. Bawumia caught on so well and assisted the NPP to win power, because he did the economic conversation. Is this not yet another of the usual talk shops? And in your case, a vehicle for votes?
First, there's a tendency in this country that people feel when they listen to politicians that they come to a conclusion that, oh, we've heard this before. Yes, you may have had the opportunity of listening to other politicians basically say the same thing. But the important thing to consider is who is the messenger. It's not about the message. It's about who is the messenger. Who are you listening to? That's what is important. I cannot hold brief for what other politicians have said in the past. I want people to listen to me and understand what I'm saying on the basis of my own record and my credibility. So it cannot be just another talk show.
Right.
I have a very distinguished career, both locally and internationally, in various fields. In public service, in politics, in enterprise development, in the private sector, and in law. And so it is on the basis of my professional record that I make those representations about what I can do for this country.
So you have decided to bring your movement of change, brought these experts from various, fields, academia and the rest of them, to come and talk solutions for our economy. Yes, we know your background. We know how you transited from the UN, how you took on Protect. We know about the things you had to do, PSIs, and then now...
The FCFTA.
Yes, of course, bringing us the headquarters of the AFC.
It's not just about bringing the headquarters,
yes,
but about crafting and being the chief architect.
And in fact, before that, my reading tells me that you initiated a process that led to what is known as the World Economic Forum now.
Yes.
All of that apart, you are the man seeking the mandate to be able to transform the economy. These aspects you brought, they are not in the same ship with you. So they will not be there for the implementation. No guarantees.
Let me speak to that. What culminated in the summit was many months of consultation and discussions amongst different groups of experts. And I've made it known that the difference and the value that I bring to our politics is the promise of a great transformation. And so many months ago, I put forward to the country a great transformational plan.
That's right.
Now, so this great transformational plan, the GTP, was the working document that was the subject matter for the discussion at the summit. So it was not just a question of people coming together and generating ideas without coordination. There was a blueprint, which is a great transformational plan, which was the subject matter for interrogation by different stakeholder groups. And I've led that process of putting together this great transformational plan, but also by bringing in people from different fields, apolitical, with expertise in helping us provide the content for the GTP. So that was the basis for the discussion.
Yes, and my questioning remains that these persons who helped in generating whatever ideas it is and brainstorming the solutions for our economic recovery and future are not in the same ship with you.
Yeah, but not in the same
political ship with you.
Yeah, but Samson, let me then put this into the appropriate context. I've done this all within the context of the movement for change. And the movement has been put together, driven by 5 pillars. One of them is not just to bring together people into an inclusive government, but also to make sure that those people in government will be responsible for the execution. And so I've been preaching about a union government, about a government of national unity. So if before getting into power, I bring people together, not just to put the ideas together, but I submit same to broad stakeholder consultation, then it is just logical that if and when I'm voted into office, that those people that I've been working with, not just the experts, but the broad masses of those who have inputted into the great transformational plan would also be part of the execution.
Okay.
Yes, so this is not just...
Someone wrote that ideas without execution is mere delusion.
Yeah.
And you have been associated also with the NDPC.
NDPC?
40-year plan. As in, whilst you worked in government in trade ministry.
Yes.
40-year plan. We know the problem is execution and not exactly the plans, correct?
Yes and no. You have to first audit the plan. The plan provides the basis for execution. So it's not just a question of having a plan. The plan itself must lend, or the plan must lend itself to effective and efficient execution. And my own sense of what we've done in the past is to provide a framework for long-term development plans. That's the framework. Now you need to drill down from the framework into a more operational document, which then becomes the basis for actionable activity. So the framework is important, but you have to distill from that framework an operational plan. And the operational plan is what then you execute. So basically what I'm providing is that operational plan that will lead to efficient and effective execution.
Let me get people to appreciate why, for example, you say we need a plan, and many agree with you on that.
Yes.
That the last government, as in the NDC regime, decided that we needed affordable housing. And it doesn't look like there was a plan. They just looked for a place and went and began building towards 5,000 houses and spent $197 million US, completing about 1,502 units. The NPP comes into office. We are aware of affordable housing projects that are being done, whilst that project is getting rotten. Thieves are breaking in, destroying. And the government says we need 32 million cedis to be able to complete that. People say that does not make sense. That is waste of the country's resources. And this is not just the first time. You had Kufuor's affordable housing. The NDC came, abandoned, and began their own STS. We ended up wrong places. All of that. That is what a plan solves. But is it not really about being committed to executing our resources usefully?
First, very respectfully, I'm not here to discuss what different governments have done and evaluate how they did it. I am putting forward a certain framework for getting this country out of the economic ditch that we find ourselves. So I want us to focus on that. But be that as it may, let me contribute some perspective to this issue. The reason why you need a new political framework that goes beyond political parties, particularly our duopoly, is exactly what you are talking about. I've been preaching the fact that we must move beyond the duopoly. The reason why we must do that is, number one, the divisiveness that is occasioned by the duopoly is not sustainable. It does not help our country. But number two, and equally importantly, is the fact that when you have a duopoly, it does a number of things. One, there is no continuity in terms of not just governance, but also the kind of projects and programs that are initiated by successive governments. And this is exactly what you are talking about. There's also a winner-takes-all mentality, which then obscures us from the opportunity to use talents that are available. So if, for example, there was this understanding that we are working towards one common objective, and so there has to be continuity.
So that if there was a plan, for example, that we need the housing deficit is this much.
Yes.
So each government comes and contributes a certain
Absolutely.
quota.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. So then we agree in an operational plan.
Right.
That there are so many people in Ghana, so many categories who require different types of housing. And this is basically how we should go about delivering houses. And then a government comes in, they start, and then if another party comes in, then they continue. So
Right.
basically, that speaks to the validity of the concept of this non-partisan approach to politics.
Right. And just before you came in, I played this clip of Dr. Nyanya Tamaklo asking a question of Kwame Pianing at the UPSA annual leadership lectures. And he asked the question about China, the Singapores of this world, and how it is deliberate planning that has led them to the successes and the economic, liberation that they find themselves today.
Yes.
And ask Kwame Pianing that, what's the problem with us? We have had an attempt to have such plans through the NDPC once again, but the politicians have jettisoned it. What is it that you are going to do to ensure that this will be different?
The NDPC does not lead this country. The NDPC does not go to general elections to seek for, the mandate to rule. So the difference between what is happening and what I have been talking about is the fact that you need a leader who has one vision, who has competence, who has the integrity, the selflessness, and the execution capability. So once you have a leader that provides those characteristics, then that will define what the NDPC does. I'm not in any way, please don't get me wrong, devaluing the importance of the NDPC as an institution. I'm talking about the fact that it is a question of leadership. The NDPC must draw their strength from the direction that is provided from. So if, for example, I'm talking as a leader, which I want to make clear to the people of this Ghana, that the value that I bring to this conversation is about transformation, about economic prosperity. That is what I am talking about. And once I set that direction, then the content of whatever NDPC does, and even the selection of people who go to constitute the membership of the NDPC will then be properly directed. You don't need an NDPC that is just a consolidation or representation of various institutions. It doesn't work that way. So, for example, if you go to more matured economies, when they talk about an economic management team, it's not just bringing ministers who are in your government to sit there and just swallow whatever the party believes in or the government believes. You bring people who have the capacity to add value to policy. And remember, I think, you see, the main weapon that every government has is the power to make policy. That is the most powerful weapon. And it doesn't cost anything to make policy. But the quality of your outcomes as a politician is based on your capacity to be able to shape and drive policy.
Right. So this summit feeds, as you say, very well into your great transformation plan.
Yes, very much so.
Is it to say that you are still in the consultative process, or as we speak, we have a certain clarity about what the plan is that will deliver us from this kind of IMF poverty?
Yes, I like that. Now, there's clarity about what the plan is speaking to, because it's documented. And I'm not one of the politicians that will say, oh, but if you bring it out and people know about what you want to do, then either people will steal your ideas.
Or their manifestos.
I'm not interested in that.
Okay.
I know with the help of God, I'll become president. And so I want to prepare what will make it possible for me to make a difference before I get to power. Not to wait until they give you the mandate and you are now coming to put together a team to decide what you want to do. That alone takes 1.5 years.
If you wanted to share with us one of the diagnoses and the, as it were, the prescription for our economic, situation, what will it be in that plan?
I would say, let's say, currency, the stability of our currency. I mean, look, I have 150 policy prescriptions in the whole GTP, which are categorized under 6 thematic areas. But the focus on this one was just the economic cluster. Now, but when you are looking at economic revitalization, the stability of your currency is very important because it has implications for inflation in particular. It has implications for even the level of growth that you can achieve as a country and the multiplier effect. So I believe that if we just took the issue of currency, the strength of your currency is a factor, or it's a question of the demand and supply of foreign exchange. And the more foreign exchange you have, the more stable your currency will be as against other currencies, particularly, let's say, the dollar. Now, in this particular case, if we are able to increase exports, it means the supply of foreign exchange would increase. At the same time, if you are able to reduce the level of imports, then we would also conserve foreign exchange. So if you have more foreign exchange, then that strengthens your local currency, because you need less local currency now to exchange for 1 unit of dollar. That is the fundamental issue or challenge for currency stabilization. We need to be able to export more, and we have to reduce our imports. But to be able to do that, you have to produce. And you have to produce competitively. That's the whole thing about being able to industrialize.
Right.
So the basis of industrial transformation is for you to be able to produce, export, reduce your imports, and then that strengthens your currency.
The way to easily get people to buy into this and have faith that Alan Kyerematen will be able to deliver this to Ghanaians, and he's the option in these elections, is trust, track record. They say, by their fruits, you will know them.
Yes. These shall be known.
Yes. After your work with the UN, with Empretec, then you did 2001 to 2003, thereabout, you did ambassador to the US. Then from then, you became trade minister and PSI, Presidential Special Initiative, throughout. Then in Akufo-Addo's regime, you have held on to this position until you resigned. That's a cumulative of about some 14 years in that kind of work. What do we have to show for as the platform to trust that Alan will do as he says?
Samson, I thought you were moving on to a very interesting analysis, but then you seem to have just restricted that to the political space. If you're looking for a leader, go beyond and look at where he started from. That is what is important. There are many people in key government positions who have no business being where they are. If you look at their past record, what have you done? Where did you come from? How did you get there? Now, so I want us to go beyond that. Where did he start from? I mean, basically, I started my career in the private sector. I was one of the youngest managers ever recruited in Unilever. In the olden days, it was called UAC. At the age of 22 years, I was a manager in the Unilever. And my record in Unilever is there.
That has been a successful brand.
Everybody who knows about the history of UAC in Ghana will know about me. So I have a firm, solid record of success in the private sector. I did not just spring up, as a politician. But then, interestingly, I left Unilever only for one thing, because at that time, I also wanted experience in the public sector. And I became a principal consultant in what used to be the leading organization for restructuring government enterprises, which was called the MDPI. And that also provided me with the expertise and the experience and the exposure about how to fix the public sector. So I came from the private sector, high level of executive performance, moved into the leadership of public service management and consulting. I mean, many people don't know that I led the team in the 80s to reorganize the whole civil aviation sector. That was when we decided to break the civil aviation into two: airport company and then civil aviation authority. So you cannot just come around and speak your way through to become president. What did you do in the past?
Yes.
Do you have a record of public sector, performance? So that actually then took me to a point where, in spite of the fact that I had been successful in the private sector in public, the UN convinced me then to start a program to develop small and medium enterprises in Ghana. So that's how I created and founded the MPTech program. And I can tell you, 60 to 70% of the high-performing local companies in Ghana all came through the MPTech program. I don't want to mention it on here. So I have paid my dues. And because of my success with building companies, building enterprises, the UN again appointed me as the regional boss for enterprise development in the whole of Africa, So, and I was able to bring this experience to over 13 other African countries. The same building companies, building entrepreneurs.
Yes, but can you say the same of the over a decade in public service?
But absolutely. But I'm saying that, you see, it is wrong for you to start from there. Start from where...
Yes.
Because,
so grant you that, after you have taken us to that background.
Then from there into politics. If you look at my record as ambassador in the United States, it speaks for itself. I'm not here to talk about that record, but if you try to find out, it speaks for itself. But beyond that, you remember that even before I went to the United States as ambassador, I initiated the presidential special initiatives. Because I advised the president at that time, President Kufuor, that let us identify only 4 strategic sectors to diversify our economy away from cocoa. I have picked garments and textiles, industrial salt, cassava starch, industrial starch, and then oil palm. Just 4. That's exactly what my advice is. If you don't do anything at all during your presidency and you just focus on these 4 sectors, you move Ghana forward.
That can move Ghana forward, can transform our economy.
Absolutely.
But it hasn't.
Then oil palm. But basically, you don't have the record because I cannot speak for what happened after that. But at least within a matter of 3 years, we were able to cultivate 100,000 acres of oil palm, as against only 20,000 since independence. Before I introduced the PSI on oil palm, since independence, it was only about 20,000 acres of oil palm that had been. And that was actually just between the big multinational companies, Norpalm, Trefoil Palm, are now talking about localizing the oil palm industry. 100,000 acres, 4 million nurseries, So people who know and have understood the value that I brought into this country for them.
In the area of governance, we are aware of what through AGOA,
yes,
and
it
which
was all the PSI.
Exactly.
Yes.
Were able to get for this country is progress.
Yes.
But when you talk about this oil and everything else, and somebody walks into, the shelves today to want to buy oil, and everything they see is imported, it doesn't speak well of what was meant to be the game changer.
Yes. You've read it 100% right. But don't put that blame on me. I have nothing to do with that. I've told you what I did. If there was continuity of government, just listen to what I'm saying. I provide direction and execution, not just talking. And so we start a new initiative to transform our oil palm industry. Look, Malaysia earns $20 billion every year. $20 billion from oil palm alone. So we are not just talking, 20 palm. So even if we were able to do half of that, that is 5 times how much we earn from cocoa.
So this is something you are so committed to.
Very much so, and it's part of the new strategic anchor industry that I'm promoting. But to the point that, so then what happened? If you are seeing imported cooking oil on our shelves, and you know the story, what I'm telling you now, but that's the more reason why I should become president. Because even at that time, even without being president, I provided that direction. If there was continuity, as I'm saying, that we see, you don't need to elect a president on the basis of political color.
Right.
It doesn't make sense. Is it because you are MPP or your NDC, it makes you the right person?
But say your 1D1F platform
Yes.
was to continue from the PSIs.
Absolutely. Not just to continue, but to expand it in different ways and to localize it further.
And
because
you can
this was decentralizing.
And you can say today that you are proud about that project.
It is the most revolutionary and the most innovative and the most comprehensive program of industrial transformation, not only in Ghana, but in Africa. You see, when I travel around, I used to travel around with President Akufo-Addo. In countries that understand what development is, the first thing they tell President Akufo-Addo is that you have a great project in that one district, one fact. Everywhere we've been to. So we are not celebrated in our own country. But I'm very happy that you've been able to
the results should be so abundant for Ghanaians to see, and without anyone telling them that this is the product of 1D1F. But as we speak, as the last time we checked, we don't even import, we don't even produce 2% of the poultry we consume. And that takes us millions of Ghana cedis, of dollars all the time.
But that is also because the media, regrettably sometimes, and I'm choosing my words very carefully, I said sometimes, are very negative in their reportage. I mean, if you have a Joy News report on 1D1F, which is so biased, they go around shooting, images of 1D1F companies. They don't provide enough content for people to evaluate what they are showing to the people, and it's all negative commentary about 1D1F.
Negative commentary cannot.
Who does it help?
Negative commentary cannot replace and overcome the reality.
Yeah.
The reality must be so unavoidable that no one can use their negative, false commentary.
Yeah. But Samson, let me ask you
to stop what is Samson, real.
Does it help for for that negative commentary. If
the companies are collapsing,
yes,
the story has to be told.
But it has to be told in a transparent, in a balanced and fair manner. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
And please don't argue about
That's
it.
fair.
Because
That's fair
please,
to say.
you see, the 4 pillars of journalism is to do what? Is to inform, educate, entertain. So what we are talking about is that if it is about having a balanced, fair analysis, then you not just show that. But anyway, I think you're making a very important point.
All right.
I think there is no doubt, or you are not disputing the value of the One District, One Factory program.
Absolutely not.
Now, if you are now trying to audit the challenges and somehow we can make it better, that's another conversation.
All right. All right.
And the government knows that because we have not prioritized industrial development, the amount of resources that is required to make the 1D1F even more productive, those resources have not been deployed. That's basically what it is.
You're still here on Newsfile. This is our very first segment in the special with Alan John Kojo Kyerematen, presidential candidate and a former Minister for Trade and Industry. And his movement for change organized a national economic summit yesterday, and they're seeking to rally bipartisan support for ideas into a national development plan of sort, feeding into his great transformation agenda or plan for the country if he's lucky enough to become president. I've got a lot of messages from you, but we've got just a couple of minutes to wrap up. This one, Nana says that I've had the opportunity to work with Mr. Kyerematen, and I am always amazed by how detailed he is. We introduced an initiative that had infrastructure involved, and this man will demand an action plan that must contain every single activity step needed for a successful launch of the initiative. And he will sit down with us himself to interrogate the action plan and demand answers for inaction. I remember he wanting to know whether we mowed the grass with a mower or cutlass. That is how detailed he can be with what he seeks. This one from Suleimana, it says, Alan's basis of resignation from his ministerial appointment and from the NPP make it utterly impossible to trust that his new drive is based on true passion. His new sermon of deduopolizing Ghana's politics was never heard until he decided to leave the NPP after he felt hard done by. If he had won the primaries in NPP, will this sermon ever be heard? Plausibly, no. As a watcher, I cannot take that as anything different from what exists now. So there are many who have messages, positive, and as you would say, negative, but they are criticisms. This one from Iraba, she says, will Mr. Alan Kyerematen have led NPP if he was chosen as their flag bearer? Why is it that he knew NPP has messed up but still decided to contest? This is a dent on him, and it's making it difficult for people to support him. I saw that Ghana needs an independent candidate and not a political party. I have been writing about it for some time now. Political parties are a chain of thieves, and we can't take them out. I agree with him on the plan. This I have been advocating for. It is the main reason we are wasting a lot of monies. Will he complete all cost-efficient, uncompleted projects in the country before starting new ones? Let's know his take about that as well. So, briefly, Positive commentary, and there are so many I will share once we are done with this in the next few minutes.
Okay.
But you take the criticism in good faith, don't you?
Oh, very much so. I mean, look, I mean, that is me, that's my style. I have no difficulty if people disagree with me. But because I take things seriously, you have to be able to convince me that you yourself, you understand what you are talking about. That's how people have been misled, in this country. So I don't have any problem if people feel differently.
Great. So I had asked earlier that is it really about lack of plans or corruption that is frustrating the plans? And I use the affordable housing project as an example. Is it really about lack of plans or corruption that is the major problem, frustrating the plans? Because it does appear as if the political leaders go in and the first thing is build a war chest, steal as much as you can. And today we see the brazen corruption. We see them. You must be such a novice not to see it. People who had no business to their name today can afford what you can't imagine. And you don't know where the money is coming from. It definitely is coming from corruption. And they are within the government. So corruption is the biggest bane, isn't it?
You are preaching to the converted. But let me qualify my understanding of what you are saying. The bread and butter policy issues with the economy are important. The governance-related issues are also important. They are two sides of the same coin. So they have to be dealt with on two parallel tracks, operating with the same level of intensity at the same time. So if you look at my GTP, it's not just I have 6 clusters. There's the economic cluster, which is the subject of this summit, but there's also the governance cluster, where we deal with corruption, where we deal with constitutional reforms that will improve the quality of our governance, where we deal with our behavioral and attitudinal changes as a people. So the governance issues, including very much what you are talking about, corruption, has an impact on the economy and on the economic cluster. So, as I said, if we could just abate corruption by 10%, only by 10%, it would increase our economic performance by double of that, about 20%. So it's a question.
We have a 5,000 housing project, 5,000 unit housing, affordable housing project. And we sink in excess of $100 million, only completing 1,000 plus of that. And we still need about 35,000 to complete that. That is how corruption is staring us in the face. Now, you have promised that you will sign what you call a citizen's contract.
Yes.
A citizen's contract to wage a relentless war against corruption. Yes. Ghana has made zero improvement in the corruption fight in the last 4 years. What can you do differently? Is it just about signing a contract with us?
First, and I want to repeat this, I don't think we have enough time to interrogate the corruption challenges in our country across various governments. But if you ask what my own perspective is, number one is about leadership. Leadership by example. But when we talk about leadership by example, it's not just about leadership as a president. It's about the president and the people around you. That is the leadership by example, collective leadership by example. That's how I will put it. Number two is about the transparency of our legal and regulatory regime. You see, if you have a public procurement law, that in itself can create an incentive for corruption. Then it means you have to fix the law. That if you have regulation and laws that would create an incentive because there are openings for people then to be corrupt, then you have to fix the law. So it's also about regulatory and legislation, but it's also about institutional response. The institutions that have been established to fight corruption. What is the level of resource allocation to them? Who are appointed into those
This government passed a very important corruption instrument, the Right to Information, law. Set up a special prosecutor because attorney generals cannot prosecute their own. That's a fact. So set up a special prosecutor and has done a number of things, improved the punishment for certain corrupt acts to, felony properly, so to speak. And yet, the government is swimming in the corruption in a manner that has not been seen before. This government won elections partly on the back of the corruption campaign against John Mahama. John Mahama did the corruption perception index 48%, his best. He moved to 47%, and then 43, he couldn't do better beyond that. And this government took over, and then 43. It just can't seem to be able to move. My question finally to you is, you have said that you are in this to create prosperity for Ghanaians.
Yes. Economic prosperity.
Right. Are Ghanaians accepting your message so far, knowing the very odds that independent presidential candidates have yet to make even 1% in our elections?
They are. But just before I get to that, unfortunately, I'm not here to audit the corruption record of either NPP or NDC. That's why I'm unable to provide answers.
You're seeking office. So
yes. Yeah, no. But,
and this is current, so we should ask you about
it. But Samson, let's be real. You cannot, this is not a platform. You know how much time you need. It's not that I cannot do that, but let's say this is not a platform to do that. But I'm telling you that I'm giving you a sense of the kind of direction I would want to provide. You understand?
You want to focus on the economy.
Yeah, but you see, but the point is that you can check my record. I've been in this game for quite some time. Check my record. That should provide you a sense of whether there is anything directly, indirectly, remotely that has been associated with me in terms of corruption over that period. And then also, not just in government, let people go back, and know the person before they start talking about.
I don't recall any of the corruption scandals anywhere close to you.
No, absolutely, yes. So I was just saying that your final question
about whether people are actually buying into the fact that you represent what they need to bring prosperity to them, and you also knowing that this is almost an impossible task.
It is a possible task. You see, something, I'll tell you something. People will be shocked in this country. I will tell you. Because, see, by the nature of Ghanaians, it is very difficult for them to tell you what actually they are thinking. I know the famous Shakespeare, there's no art to find the mind's construction in the face. It is more relevant in Ghana than anywhere else. So people are not talking. But I can tell you, let us wait and see what will happen. Because, you see, the point is that, number one, people want to move beyond the NPP and the NDC.
That's correct.
So, I mean, Alan is a clear, valid, and credible alternative.
So the third force Ghanaians are crying for.
It is when you don't have an alternative that you are somehow handcuffed, and handicapped. That's not the issue. And at any rate, because you want to know whether people are convinced about. Yes, they are.
We have seen these massive crowds that you have gathered at your town hall meetings. And I was surprised to hear that at one of such meetings, that the crowds we saw were not members, but they were rather officers, just officers. Such a huge crowd.
So where
are you
are
certain that will translate into
But where
for
are they all day coming from? Let me tell you one thing. You see, because you have to also do analysis of crowds to know whether it's a real crowd or not. So you have somebody who exists from a dominant party, let's say MPP. Now, the stronghold of that party is maybe Ashanti region. If you have somebody who exists from a party and is able to make such an impression in their stronghold within such a short time, then it should tell you something. Where is the crowd coming from? And I can tell you, the crowd you saw in Kumasi, 70% of the people who were waiting around in Ashanti region could not even get transportation to come.
Oh.
I'm telling you, 70%.
All right, Honorable Alan John.
But my last point is that it is because you need executive authority to make things happen. That's why I'm in this game.
We wish you the very best, sir.
Thank you, Samson.
Have a good day.
Okay, take care.
All right, so that's it. We are special with Alan John Kyerematen, presidential candidate and former minister for trade and industry, whose movement for change led the National Economic Summit yesterday, where they are seeking to rally bipartisan expertise for a transformation of the Ghanaian economy. We'll be right back with my guests to interrogate the matter of Ghana scoring or making zero improvement in the corruption perception index in the last 4 years.
I was expecting a reduction, because if you follow the issues of corruption going on in the country, one would have expected that we would have been downgraded. So even where we are now, I think it's not a true reflection of the situation on the ground. Yes, the Deputy Attorney General made us to understand that we have the legal framework, which is true. We have the institutions and we have the personnel. So the question is why? It is not the laws which are going to fight corruption, neither the institutions and the persons only. We need leadership in the fight against corruption. If there is leadership in the fight against corruption, as my sister Mary was alluding to, it sends the signal throughout the system. I keep saying to people that in public financial management, issues relating to public management, it storms at the top and then it drizzles at the bottom.
Corruption is a two-way affair. You have the giver, you have the receiver. The giver, if he's reported and he can be arrested and prosecuted, the receiver too can be investigated and prosecuted. And so if the giver realizes that upon complaining, he can be prosecuted, the only thing that he can do is that he just keep quiet, go back to his home and then tell his friend. The friend will tell a friend, then it falls into the rumor mill. Then what happens is that people just become that kind of perception. The person who has received it, because he knows that he will also be prosecuted, definitely will not go and report himself to the security agencies. People are not ready to report corrupt activities, but people are so comfortable going to the rumor mill, just trying to tell others that the system is so porous, the system is so corrupt, without reporting and without giving evidence to the agencies to work with.
I was expecting.
You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's the most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile we put Ghana first. And now joining us for this segment on the matter of the Corruption Perception Index, which has just been released. Transparency International, its local chapter here in Ghana. Coordinating that is the Ghana Integrity Initiative. Mary Awalana Ada is the Executive Director. Dr. Emmanuel Akwete is Executive Director, Institute for Democratic Governance. And here in the studio, Sami Jamfi is National Communications Officer of the NDC. He's a lawyer. And Joseph Dindiok Pemka is former Deputy Attorney General and Minister of Justice. Of course, there's no need saying he's a lawyer because that's the first qualification to be an Attorney General or Deputy Attorney General. Welcome to Newsfile, gentlemen.
Thanks for coming in.
Welcome, Mary.
Good, Samson. Good morning to you and to the other panelists.
Right. I can understand your disappointment from the perspective of the anti-corruption organizations that for 4 years now, and as I look at the charts, a very, very disturbing chart. Professor Mills, 2012, 45%, 45%, then 2013, John Mahama, 46%. We're looking at it from the leaders who profess to fight it. 2014, 48%, he took us to the highest then. Then 2015, 47%. 2016, 43%. This is the 43% that the NPP made such a big deal out of and got John Mahama out of office. Now the NPP comes in 40% under Akufo-Addo 2017. It took the bar even lower. Then managed to come to 41% in 2018. 2019 stayed at 41%. 2020, 43%. 2021, 43%. 2022, 43%. And 2023, 43%. So John Mahama's worst has been Akufo-Addo's best. Let me start with Sami Jamfi before I come to you. The NDC is looking at these statistics and saying, really? Ghanaians made such a big mistake. That's what you're saying, right?
I wish I could say that. And in fact, I'll be right to say that. However, if you look at this from the standpoint of the Ghanaian, the nation Ghana, which continues to lose millions of cedis, which could have gone into useful ventures, like the construction of hospitals, schools, and other useful developmental projects for the benefit of the people. Losing all these monies to corruption, then you will say, wait a minute, let me not claim vindication, but let us have a discussion about how we can change direction, how we can change the approach which the current administration is using for the fight against corruption, and rescue this country, redeem the soul of this country from the clutches of the epidemic, levels of corruption we have seen in recent time. Like you rightly stated a while ago, corruption has become, the main symptom of the Akufo-Addo Bawumia government. The figures you just read are very clear. Our performance on the Corruption Perception Index of Transparency International in the last 7 years has been abysmal. It's been very terrible. But Samson, that is not surprising. And it is not surprising because you reap what you sow. And we are reaping the seeds we have sown relative to the fight against corruption. This is what you get when the government of the day decides to pay lip service to the fight against corruption. The perception of corruption in Ghana today is at an all-time high because the government has decided to make corruption an attractive and thriving venture. It's become a free-for-all venture for government appointees, party functionaries of the ruling, New Patriotic Party,
and it involves higher-ups, including the president, the vice president, ministers of state, and so on. This never in the history of this country have we seen such a deliberate promotion of corruption like we have seen in the last 7 years. And that is why we are performing poorly on the CPI. That is why our worst score in the last decade or so has been the score of 40 this government achieved in the year 2017, and the score of 41 they achieved in 2018, which is the second, lowest score we have had in the last decade. So clearly, we know the cause. We know the cause. You see, since this government took office, there's been countless cases of corruption. Countless cases of naked corruption and thievery. The evidence is there. The government knows. Yet in all cases, the perpetrators are walking free. They've all gone unpunished. There's been no prosecutions, no deterrence whatsoever. From the Bossgate scandals, Samson, you recall, we discussed this issue here, where 5 million liters of contaminated fuel was sold to unlicensed businesses at a cheap price, leading to a huge financial loss to the state. Without recourse to the Public Procurement Act, to the contracts for sale scandal, which was reviewed by your good friend Manasseh Azuri, where the head of the PPA at the time was captured on tape, illegally selling government contracts. He
was dealt with and is currently being prosecuted as well.
Well, by the special prosecutor. You understand? By the special prosecutor. But if you look at the fact that Shraj indicted him, he went all the way to the Court of Appeal to challenge that first decision of Shraj and lost.
He was sacked by the president. You are trying to go to another issue.
I'm going to another issue. You understand? You look at the issue of the Galamsey fraud scandal involving Charles Bissiou. The same thing. Even before the special prosecutor at the time, Martin Amidu, could conclude his investigations into the matter, the CID, who had no locus investigating the matter because they were not properly seized with the matter, cleared Charles Bissiou, a presidential staffer, who had been caught on tape collecting bribes to promote illegal mining. They're missing excavators as we speak. Frimpong Boateng, the then Minister for Environment, actually filed a police complaint against the auctioneer for, Galamstop, one Ekwawusi MPP regional vice chair for the central region, as the one responsible for the missing excavators. Till date, we don't know what the police has done about the case, and he's still walking free. The Sputnik V vaccine scandal is yet another matter. In fact, for that matter, Parliament actually investigated it and found the Minister of Health, Ajimemenu, liable for breach of the Public Procurement Act. Yet nothing has been done about it. And the president and the vice are unable to crack the whip because they themselves are involved. You have a president who gives executive approval for that Mary Innovation deal, which was padded by over $800 million. You have a vice president, Alhaji Bawumia, who decides in the PDS case to change the requirement of a bank guarantee into an insurance guarantee, change it from a condition precedent to a condition subsequent, and allows a group of people, according to, in the words of Peter Mewu, the then Minister of Energy, to defraud us, and till date, nobody has been punished.
You fix individual liability to the vice president in a matter where it's a committee that he was with. Is that not
so? But he chaired it. According to the FTI report, he chaired it. And he had no business changing what the legislature, parliament in its wisdom had done. That to prove the financial capacity of PDS, to demonstrate their financial capacity to be able to manage an important national asset, 20 billion Ghana cedis asset, that is ECG, they needed to show a bank guarantee.
But if the consortium did wrong, it was not the vice president. And it's a consortium that is now facing the troubles that happened with PDS.
No, but it was a vice president that aided the consortium to defraud us, because it was the vice president who chaired the meeting that changed the requirement of a bank guarantee into an insurance guarantee without recourse to parliament, and change it again from a condition precedent to a condition subsequent. That is the root cause of that scandal, which according to the
change of the condition did not remove the responsibility of the consortium to meet what was required to be able to undertake that.
But the point is that, Francis, Samson, if it had not been changed, you know, a bank guarantee and an insurance guarantee are not the same. The bank guarantee is more liquid, more reliable than the insurance guarantee.
So I see you have
if it had not been changed, don't stay here. Let me go on. The point is that, according to the FTI reports, if Bawumia, that beating which was chaired by Bawumia, had not changed the requirement of a bank guarantee into an insurance guarantee, change it from a condition precedent to a condition subsequent, what happened would not have happened. And bear in mind that according to the Institute of Economic Affairs, Ghana lost $2 billion as a result of that scandal alone, the biggest in the history of this country. Then you look at the institutionalization.
The biggest issue now is that we don't know what the people who led the PDS, what government has recovered from them. That's the most important.
The electricity bills we pay to them.
Exactly.
To the tune of $1.5 billion. They failed to refund that money. Till now. You understand? Now you look at certain glaring acts of corruption that are not mere allegations, but that are the findings of a constitutional authority, like the Auditor General. Here I'm talking about the COVID-19 expenditure audit, which was done by the Auditor General. And look at the findings, damning findings. We pay 1.4 million cedis to a company, Modern Security Printers, to conduct education for secondary school children on COVID-19 protocols. The money is paid in full and the job is not done. And the president and the vice are sitting down. The law enforcement agencies are sitting down. The company is known. Nothing is being done. We pay $250,000 for medical equipment. The equipment are received at the central medical stores, dispatched to specific health facilities, and according to the Auditor General, they get diverted. And no hairs are rolling, nobody is standing prosecution for this. We pay 37.6 million Ghana cedis for free water, with no water bills to show for. And you have a sitting, vice chair of the ruling party in the northern region, their former parliamentary candidate for Sagnerigu, One Felicia Tete, come out boldly to say that COVID-19 funds, public funds meant for saving lives, were dished out to us like granite. I got 200,000 by virtue of the fact that I was parliamentary candidate and vice chair of the MPP in the northern region. I know DCs who got 30,000, regional executives of the MPP who got 50,000 each, constituency executives 10,000 each.
They were helping to fight COVID-19.
What? Just mind-boggling. And then till date, this woman has not been invited by any of the law enforcement agencies. COVID money. You see, so it is, and what is even sad in all this, Samson, and I know you have been a constant advocate on these issues, it's been the saddest thing for me in all this is how a man who rode on the back of an anti-corruption campaign and a promise to protect the public purse has turned around to use the power we have given him, the power we have entrusted him, to fight corruption fighters instead of fighting corruption. Look at how a certain Auditor General who was fighting corruption, Yawo Dumilevo, was hounded out of office. Today we know, according to the Supreme Court, that his removal was unconstitutional. Look at how Martin Amidu was compelled to resign on the back of the Ejapa scandal. At some point he said his life was under threat. Look at what they did to Manasseh Azuri, your own client. Look at what they did to Edward Adeti, who exposed a certain regional minister engaging in galamsey. You see, so if you do these things in the full glare of the public, the perception of corruption will be high. You will perform poorly on the CPI. Investors will look at it and say that, no, this is not the destination for investments. It affects the image of the country. It affects the nation in terms of we losing precious resources which could have gone into productive ventures for the benefit of the people. And so I'm saying another factor that accounts for this poor performance of this corrupt Akufo-Addo Bawumia government on the CPI is the culture of waste. The culture of waste and profligacy we have seen in the last 7 years. I mean, these guys go for one cabinet retreat in 2021 and spend 4.8 million cedis. That is some 48 billion old Ghana cedis. One cabinet retreat. They spent 10.4 million cedis on the 2021 Independence Day celebration at Cape Coast. This is their own figures submitted by the Office of Government Machinery through the Office of the Chief of Staff to Parliament in 2022. They spent 50 million cedis on car batteries and tires within 9 months. I mean, outrageous expenditures without any regard for the national interest. And so for me, we need a drastic change in the nation's approach to the fight against corruption. Like you rightly said a while ago, corruption is the biggest bane of this country. It is the reason why we can't pay our debts. It is the reason why the economy is almost collapsing now. It is the reason why we don't have money to fund the renal unit at Kolebu, which led to a shutdown for months, leading to 14 avoidable deaths. It is the reason why we could not get money to buy vaccines for children, and Nigeria had to loan us vaccines for our own children. It is a reason for the problems we are going through, because a few selfish, greedy politicians entrusted with the mandate of the people have decided to enrich themselves at the expense of the state. What we need to do is to change direction. The only way you can change direction is to change the leaders. Like Yao Dumlevo said, this is a leadership problem. The fish gets rotten starting from the head, from the president to the vice. And that is why some of us have said that a vote for Bawumia is a third-term vote for Akufo-Addo and his cabal of family and friends. Because he can't crack the whip, he cannot prosecute them when he himself has been an active part and an accomplice in this corrupt scheme. And so I think, and I submit forcefully, that the only way we can get justice, we can see prosecutions, we can see punishment being meted out to corrupt officials, is when on 7 December we make a change and bring in His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, who has promised, for example, that I will not recognize the SML contracts. You give a contract to a company which is an offshoot, and I'll land here. I know my time is up. You give a contract. It's the latest one. I need to touch on it, Samson. You give a contract to a company which is an offshoot of a timber company, has no prior experience in auditing or revenue assurance. You give them the contract based on sole sourcing, a company with no prior experience, to do what is already being done by the state regulator of the downstream petroleum sector, NPA. Mustafa Hamid says, we're already doing this. We don't see the use of the work of this company. And you pay them a staggering 24 million cedis every month. How wicked can you be? And so we need a change. The only way these people can pay for their sins, the only way we can see prosecutions, we can see punishment, we can see deterrence to lower the perception of corruption in the country, is when His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, inshallah, assume the reins of government come 7 January 2025.
Banka, we want to listen to you, the politicians, first before I go to my guest on Zoom. And he's outlined a number of scandals. You cannot debate them. There are even many more. So there are people who say even the fact that we are staying at 43 is sort of not accurate, that we should have come down. But my question is, how does it happen that a government that passed the Right to Information Act, the president in his own words said the Right to Information Act is the mother anti-corruption law. That's agreed worldwide because they say sunshine is the best disinfectant. Then we set up an OSP, and suddenly the people in government appear to fight the OSP in such a way that people say it's like you have regretted setting up the OSP. How does a government who takes these steps become unable to improve our corruption perception standing for 4 consecutive years?
Thank you very much. Thanks to your cherished viewers and to my constituents, the good people of Timpani. I say good morning to all, and good morning to your good self, good morning to my younger brother, Sammy, that I've seen for a while now. He told me he had gone away. Anyway, I want to tackle this issue from a certain perspective.
You know that.
Of course. I want to tackle this from 3 perspectives. Samson, in the last 16 years, from the statistical proclamation you did declare with alacrity in the last few minutes, I have no doubt in my mind that if the pass mark for corruption perception in any country were 50%, all governments that you adumbrated recently would have failed. That's a statement of fact. If the pass mark were 50%, then all the government from Mills through Mahama to Nana would have failed. If we just put it at the basic 50%. So what it tells you is that there's a systemic failure. And so we should not pontificate holiness and associate it with any individual character, thinking the person will be a panacea to the solution of all the problems pertaining to corruption in Ghana. That I want to say it without equivocation.
But you cannot say that should not be said. You cannot say that should not be said. Wait, hold on just a second. You cannot say that should not be said for President Akufo-Addo, whose campaign, the major message was that we had money, but the money was being wasted due to corruption, and he was coming to fix that.
See, if you allow me,
I'm going to allow you. Please go ahead.
I'll tackle all that.
Yes, go ahead.
You see, I am stating this because my brother made his submission, and you see that I was quite all through.
That's true.
You know, we shouldn't create the impression that there is an individual out there who is coming to be that angel that will take us to the promised land without the aid, assistance of all of us. It is impossible for that individual sitting at the top there to be able to manage every facet of society in manners that corruption will not fester. So it is the duty of state institutions, individuals, the public, all of us to collaborate to fight this. But as I stated in my preliminary submission, if we took the past mark to be 50%, we're going to have a situation where, unfortunately for us, none of those governments will pass the test.
Very sad.
That's very sad. And that's what we should be looking at, rather than individual share of blame and etc. We should ask ourselves, what is the reason why we are not performing well? And right now, for 4 years running, we have stagnated, isn't it? We are at 43. We haven't improved, we haven't deteriorated. If we take the perception index that has been churned out there to be anything to go by. So the point I'm making is that every government in the history of this country has in one way or the other tried to fight the menace and canker of corruption. People have taken it in different trends. And Samson, believe you me, if you look at the statutory provisions that we have actually enacted during the regime of His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, well implemented, the fight against corruption would have been taken to another level. In fact, to the skies. Because you've stated, I recall that I was privileged to be Deputy Attorney General at the time we were debating the RTI and all that. And I remember one of my senior colleagues on the floor, the Honorable Kyerematen, he quoted extensively from Britain and one of the former prime ministers and stated that if there's any law that we're going to regret after passing it was going to be RTI. You know how long...
He said there will not be secrecy in government.
Absolutely.
I don't know what he wants.
I don't know exactly. But you see, governments in the past had done everything to pass this. It never ever came to fruition. He came, took the bull by the horn, pushed this through, Parliament passed it, and we know what that has been able to do for us as we speak. A number of your colleagues, including your good self, have been able to probe into certain government institutions under the provisions of RTI to be able to get information very relevant for public consumption and to fight corruption. That's a commendable effort. But we seem to gloss over it because we think that it is just a law that we have made and that the characters to implement it will be another thing. Yes, I agree. But that is a very, very significant step that one will have to take. Again, Samson,
on the RTI
check this
law,
for me.
On the RTI law, one factual point that must never be lost is that in 2016, before Parliament would wind up, the RTI law was ready, cooked for passage. Doa Jaho was superintending the process day by day, and the MPP decided that they would not support the passage. And it was clear. Chairman Saboso didn't hide the reason they were not supporting it, that the government was in the dying days of its regime, and that they will not help it to pass it. When the NPP come, they will pass it. So it would have been passed in 2016.
But Samson, the government had an opportunity in 8 years to have passed it earlier.
That's correct.
That's the most significant thing to
In fact, in
know.
the
They had an opportunity to have passed
on
it
the
earlier.
occasion when it could have been passed,
yes,
the NDC didn't have the sufficient numbers in the House.
Yes, and why didn't they?
Because
if they had intended to pass it, they would have galvanized the majority with a 3-line whip to come over and then pass it. Then they take the credit.
My point is that your side was there and could have made the numbers for the passage, and they decided that they won't agree.
Yes, but even without our side, their side alone could have passed it. What about that? Why do you push it to the minority at the time when the majority had the numbers to be able to pass it? I'm saying that under His Excellency Nana Ado's first term, the Right to Information Act was passed.
That's correct.
And that credit will have to go to him.
Yes.
Like it or you do not. Again, there are other provisions or laws that were enacted in that regime in the first term of Nana Ado, to which I was privileged to be a member. One, if you look at the Whistleblowers Act, and then you look at the Witness Protection Act.
Whistleblowers Act is 2006.
2006, I mean, but we did some amendments. And then again, if you look at the Witness Protection, we enacted it under the first term of Nana Ado's government. And then the OSP, let me tell you this, do a cross-check, and you are a person I hold in high esteem. Do a cross-check. There has never been in the history of Ghana any time when sitting government officials have been subjected to accountability by a state institution like now. Never ever. I've done all the checks.
That's fact.
Yes, it's a factual statement. If you look at what the OSP is doing now to sitting public heads and institutions, it has never ever happened.
Perhaps with the exception of some military regimes.
Yes, I'm talking about the civilian government. Never ever. And when I did my check, I realized that the numbers are by day increasing at frightening levels. The people who have been reported to Office of Special Prosecutor for investigations and prosecutions at various stages, we have the numbers in frightening levels. And what does that tell you? It vindicates the very purpose for which the office was set up. Because if you look at the memorandum that accompanied the bill to Parliament, one of the cardinal principles was that governance experts and think tanks had actually indicated that one of our problems is the will of the Attorney General to be able to put one of his own into the dock for prosecution. Over the years from 1992.
A case attorneys general admit.
Absolutely. They themselves admit. You go to sit in cabinet with colleagues, something comes up about it, human as we are, you are most likely to lean towards protecting the person. So it was as a result of this that the Office of Special Prosecutor was set up. And if you look at what my brother Kisi is doing now, look at the number. I mean, Samuel Jefi spoke about the former head of, I think...
Bost?
No, not Bost. Public Procurement Authority.
Yes.
He's being prosecuted as we speak. And you are aware.
Yes,
I mean, the Special Prosecutor even updated the public as to how far they have gone. There are some cases that Special Prosecutor has investigated and then found that they are not within his ambit and control, and therefore they've decided that they were not going to proceed with it. You know, I remember debating with my good friend Martin Pebu on another platform about the former Minister of State at Finance.
Yeah.
You know, we debated this issue, and the Office of a Special Prosecutor came out to say that what he did amounted to influence peddling. It was not within the ambit of corruption, strictly speaking, as defined by the Office of Special Prosecutor. And therefore, it decided that if the Attorney General was interested, it could go ahead to do it. And that was within the law that he was interpreting. And you could agree or not agree with him, because Martin was saying that, look, they should have put that case before court to test the...
So what's the point, Penka?
The point I'm trying to make...
In the midst of all of this...
The point I'm trying to make is that there have been efforts to fight corruption by the government deliberately, through statutory provisions, through enactment of laws. Through enactment of laws. But we find that we are either stagnating or deteriorating. And I'm saying that we have to diagnose what are the basic causes and principles underlying the fact that we have all the beautiful laws that we have promulgated over time and period, and yet we are unable to reduce it to the barest minimum. And I say so because, you see, our society itself is structured in a manner that if care is not taken, public officers are likely to run themselves into corrupt practices. And I say this again, Samson.
In Singapore,
let me give you one example.
In Singapore, the transport minister is involved in a $119,000 corruption scandal. A gift given to him, including air tickets, business class tickets, and the rest. He has resigned. He's resigned as a minister. He's resigned as an MP. Here we are in Ghana. A minister can boast of in excess of $1 million in their bedroom, and the president will issue a statement saying that she'll be exonerated.
No, but you see, the point is that it is investigations that will prove the guilt or otherwise of a person. And Samson, you know that if you allege, you prove it. And the fact is, have we criminalized it? If as a nation we've realized that a vacuum has been created and people are exploiting it, let's criminalize it specifically, that you cannot have a certain amount of money in your bedroom. Once you haven't criminalized it, and you find that money in the person's bedroom, it is no offense by the Constitution if the person's money even is in trillions, except where you can directly link that particular wealth that was acquired the person to a corrupt act of that particular person, then you can subject the person to scrutiny. And remember that
the import of my question, sir,
yes,
is this, that don't you think the conduct of the leaders is part of the reason why many major anti-corruption laws have been passed, and yet we are unable to make a dent in the fight? He mentioned the bust issue. That man had to resign or somehow left the place. He's in parliament. Not too long ago, he was heard on radio tape saying that he has kept dollars seeking to bribe delegates, and that he will pay more than 10,000 if his opponents paid more than that. He will pay more than 20,000 if his opponents paid more than that per delegate. Not a single person within the party has condemned that conduct.
The point is, again, that is an intent to bribe. Okay? It's an intent to bribe, clearly from that statement. And again, we have statutory institutions responsible for such cases, that you can invite the person, and attempt to bribe is as good as bribing, if you can establish it in any competent court. And remember that the punishments are virtually the same. So what I'm seeking to say is that if no person or group of persons have come out to speak against it, that doesn't mean that anybody is complicit in it. What it only means is that institutions that are supposed to take action ought to have acted. Remember that there was one in the Ashanti region, a nominee MCE or so.
Yeah, he's
currently being prosecuted. Yeah. Yes, because it is alleged that he bribed some people to vote for him.
They belong to groups. Elsewhere,
yes,
they'll be disowned. They'll be forced to resign just by their comments. You don't think that's
the point? The point sometimes is that, you see, I have a problem, and one of the problems I have with some of these things is prejudice. When you take certain actions that prejudice the outcome, and you are likely to have condemned the person before hearing him, what if you rather allow that the institutions go in and then do the investigations, they prosecute, they get or secure conviction, then you say that, look, that conduct which has now been proven is unconscionable, unacceptable, and therefore we condemn it in no uncertain terms. But if you just hear any piece of information, you jump into conclusion, and in the end, the person is prosecuted and vindicated, what happens? You would have destroyed the person's image and reputation anyway. So we shouldn't be fast at drawing conclusions. You see, I agree, Samson, it is only those who pretend or behave like ostriches who will say that corruption does not exist in the country. I will not be party to that. It does exist. But what do we do? President Kufuor stated that it existed in the time of Adam. He stated that. President Mills acknowledged the impact of corruption in our society. President Mahama did. President Rawlings did. President Anado has done so. All of us collectively have acknowledged that one of the things that are eating into the very fabric of our society and destroying us to the core is corruption. But we are not improving. Why?
President Mahama, when one of his ministers, spoke about an intention, which some people said was even for a joke, of making $1 million, she was sacked. That's the difference people are pointing to.
No. You see, I want to state this to you. That was an intent that she actually expressed, and then she was sacked. But have you aggregated that against the backdrop of other bigger things that happened during that regime that went unpunished too? You have to aggregate it against that. And that is why I wanted Sami to be present, and I would have pointed out to him. You see, for me, we should accept this as an endemic problem that all of us collectively need to come together to fight. Because there are no angels. And especially in the past, the leadership that people have exhibited and all that, we've seen what they are capable of and what they are not capable of. And so, if we are talking about the issue of corruption, we have to, do a national debate. Let me go to my guest. Samson, maybe a last one.
Yes.
I was trying to make a point earlier, and then you distracted me a bit. And I want to just reiterate that before I hang my gloves. When you are a member of parliament, or a deputy minister, or a minister, or a CEO, or a deputy CEO, you go to any place, party foot soldiers come. They line up, and they start, when people are celebrating their birthdays, monitor Facebook. There are some CEOs or deputy CEOs, when they are celebrating their birthdays, their wishes are more than 1 million. Those people are said to be very generous and very helpful. But mind you, some of those pieces of generosity exhibited against the backdrop of the person's genuine income cannot be explained. But these are, it's factual. It cannot be explained. The person cannot justify the expenditure. And yet, the foot soldiers will hail such a person. The other one, who by virtue of principle or some kind of thing is not generous enough to them, who probably is living on the salary and is not able to manipulate anything, he's called names. And they call for the person's removal and all that. So again, our society itself, by virtue of the structure, conduct of the individuals and persons, we promote it deliberately. And then we seek to say again, institutions to fight it. It becomes very difficult.
We have just come from elections of MPs and other things, MP candidates and the rest. And we have seen how money, the elections have become for the highest bidder. So let me thank you very much for your patience, Mary, and to Dr. Akwete. So, okay, Mary, let me just ask you this, because what I was going to ask you might be unfair. So that from where you sit as the local, chapter of Transparency International that has done this over the years, what do you say to those who say it should have been worse? It shouldn't have remained where it is. He mentions Witness Protection Act. And some people say, yes, you passed Witness Protection Act, yet a journalist was murdered who was being a witness and all of that. What do you say?
Thank you very much, Samson. I just wanted to ask my brother Dindiok, now who caused him? Now who caused the citizens to be demanding excessively? But perhaps that's a point of introspection we all need to pay attention to. Because in this fight, when the citizen sees that the only way they can also benefit from their share of the national cake, then it shouldn't be surprising. I'm not in any way justifying such behavior, but then it's gotten to a point where in this democratic experiment, our political office holders and those whom we have given power onto to ensure that the affairs of the state are in a good place, have decided that they would enrich themselves and make things uncomfortable for the citizen. And so some of these behaviors are manifesting. Again, when they decide that they will pass half-baked laws, we continue to say when it comes to legislations, there is no way we are handicapped at all. But when you look at the details of those legislations that are passed, then you realize that we have a big challenge on our hands. You can see that manifesting in the affairs of the Office of the Special Prosecutor, when most of the cases he's trying to investigate are not standing the test of time. And so he is quickly also finding other avenues to collaborate. Then let me come to the question you asked about fairness. Samson, you know the Corruption Perception Index is an aggregate of various indices from a list of 3 and a maximum of 13 for any country to be able to make it into the index for any particular year. It is based on surveys that have been conducted 12 to 24 months within the period. It also captures the perceptions of experts and academics within the jurisdiction that have been conducted in various surveys that I mentioned, those 13. Again, and so even with that, you would understand that from a survey perspective, it is not what we would want to see that is manifesting, but we are speaking to the fact that we have data that stands the test of time. We are dealing with data that is credible, and if you are talking about issues of validity, we are very valid. We are also dealing with data that speaks of expert opinions and not citizens' opinions, expert opinions and experiences over the period I've spoken to. And so in the analysis are very succinct, the analysis are very cogent, the degree of margin of error is very low, and so whatever evidence is given is what it should be. And so even though you may say that there is a lot of talk about corruption going on in the country, and for that matter, we should have measured worse. That is not it. We are talking about Ghana being assessed based on 9 different data sources, and these data sources make us, give us the place where we find ourselves. And we are not the only ones. We are with Senegal and another country which scored 43. Let me say that in the score, the issues that are dealt with are not just the issues of bribery. We talk about diversion of public funds. The score measuring corruption also talks about prevalence of public officials using public office for private gain without facing any consequences. We talk about ability of governments to contain corruption and enforce effective integrity mechanisms in the public sector. Again, the Corruption Perception Index looks at issues of meritocracy versus issues of nepotism and cronyism, effective criminal prosecutions for corrupt officials, and then adequate laws on financial disclosure and conflict of interest of public officials. Then again, we talk about legal protection for whistleblowers, including journalists, investigators, and others. State capture, which we have seen in the past week that Ghana's state capture ranking is increasingly becoming a worry, because even though we are not in a dangerous place, it is becoming worrying because it's gradually and progressively rising. Then access to civil society for information on public affairs. And as the 2 previous speakers have indicated, we are looking at a place where we want to see access to information going just beyond talking about it. We know the challenges that we have to face to get information. We have sent requests to some institutions. I remember National Lottery, and they came back to tell us that that is information that is within the secrecy jurisdiction and cannot be given to us. And that's not just the only one. We have had other examples. However, in the right to information case, we have the commission where you can go to for redress. When Honorable Dindiok mentioned the Whistleblower Act, I just wanted to also ask if the Whistleblower Commission, the Witness Protection Commission has been put in place. And that is the only way the activation of the witness protection would be.
But witness protection, that is even new. Whistleblower Act 2006, the fund that is supposed to be set up to make it attractive for people to blow the whistle and get compensated. The fund has not been set up since 2006. The law was passed. So if you are expecting that the witness protection, which is rather new, the process, the institution will be set up, then do you think you will get that?
Samson, that is why I'm saying that sometimes our legislators and the executive who draft these bills and get them through to get passed, I'm beginning to have the impression that some of the lapses that are in there are intentional, so that we find it difficult to prosecute the agenda of corruption. As a student of policy, some of these things are worrying, because if we put in place mechanisms that cannot be actualized in policy, then we are looking at the evidence of policy failure in our dispensation. And that is not what we want. We would be seeing some of these failures manifest in the lack of progress. And as citizens, it's painful. Painful also because when we were given the opportunity by this president, the current president, when he took power, he started, remember, as it was stated earlier, he came on the campaign on anti-corruption, and so his message, for which the people of Ghana voted for him, was one that was grounded on anti-corruption. Then I was listening to your earlier interview where the gentleman was talking about his record of not being corrupt. I think one of the other records was that this current president is spotless when it comes to allegations of corruption. Again, there was so much goodwill from the people of Ghana that they believe that such an anti-corruption expert, a legal luminary, of course, and an anti-corruption person would show some credence of those credentials. And yes, of course, he started by ensuring that he met stakeholders on a very frequent basis. And in one of such meetings, the president, His Excellency President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, requested that he wanted to understand how the corruption perception index is calculated. And civil society was so happy that on this president who wants to fight corruption, I remember Dr. Akwete was part of this team. We went, the Ghana Integrity Initiative prepared a paper on this, and we went and submitted same. We actually showed some of the things I've talked about here. What are some of the components of corruption that goes into the various indices or the various surveys that are captured within the African Development Bank, be it World Bank, whichever. And it was a very good discussion where the president showed commitment that he would want to work towards changing the narrative. Unfortunately, after 2-3 meetings, the relationship, I don't know what happened, perhaps we need to resuscitate it, went into coma. And after the coma, these are some of the manifestations we have seen. So I believe from 2021, some things happened, and we have gotten to a place where we decided that we are very fine. We should stay at 43. However, I just wanted to make a brief submission before I bring my preliminary remarks to an end, that countries in Africa which have stagnated for a long period have tended to fall. And so until we make up our minds that we want to make an impressive turnaround and then pay attention to all those things that are used to measure the CPI, then we need to pay attention, because out of 6, 4 fell significantly. And when I say significantly, it means you are falling more than 5 points, like we did in between 2014 and 2015. If we want to make progress, 6 out of 4 countries, 6 countries, 4 fell, and only 2 were able to make some gains, and those were not significant.
Okay. Yes, and my final question to you will be, we are seeking to understand, for a government whose regime has passed the most important legislations to fight corruption, the RTI once again, the OSP Act, and yet it has not been able to make a dent, staying where it is. For a government that has been claiming which some investigations show is actually not a fact, that the Akufo-Addo regime has funded anti-corruption bodies more than any other government. The fact check at the Media Foundation for West Africa did their fact check, and they came to the conclusion that that claim is false. It's false on two levels. That the percentage or the interest, when they look at the money today, they are not comparing to the money yesterday when for example, in the NDC regime, they were giving the money. So you must compare the money and talk about the value of the money, not just the quantum. And then again, for the individual institutions, they found out, for example, that the audit service, judicial service, the SHRAJ, the claims of providing more funding to these institutions than any other government was false. Why was it false? They looked at how much indeed they received. So that if you took the audit service for a period between 2013 to 2016 under the NDC, and then for a period between 2017 and 2020 under the NPP, the NDC government, the rate of confirmation or approvals of the monies they needed, they approved 117.4% of the budgetary requests, whilst in the Akufo-Addo regime, it was 84% that was approved. If you take the judicial service, there was approval under the Mahama regime within the same period, 88% approval rate of confirmation of the budget they needed. In the Akufo-Addo regime, the approval was 72%. If you take SHRAJ, in the Mahama regime, within the same period, the approvals were 108%, whilst in the Akufo-Addo regime, it was 90%. So they say these claims, yeah, the quantum, whatever it is, but it's false. What do you say?
Samson, perhaps maybe let's not argue about whether this is true or not. Let's concede to them that this current government is the one which has resourced the anti-corruption institutions more than any other, which we all know is not the case anyway. There's evidence to that effect. However, if we put in inputs, Samson, we expect to achieve outputs. And
right.
So if these inputs are positive, we are expecting positive outputs. And so if you have resourced the agencies, then it means something is wrong somewhere. Either our anti-corruption institutions are not working as they should. I am also informing you, for instance, for SHRAJ, until recently, they didn't even have district offices everywhere across the country. Until recently. And most of the others do not. So, and then when you go to some of these offices, the sorry nature of them, they lack resources, they lack staff. The resourcing is money and staff as well. SHRAJ at the headquarters level is also struggling. And so whether we have given more than any other is besides the point. What we are talking about is if you have put in more, it should be evidenced by the outputs we are making. We see rhetoric on putting in more. We see budgets on putting in more. However, when it comes to the actual disbursements, I was on another platform with the Deputy Attorney General, and he indicated no institution has enough resources to operate. And so what the government has done is more than enough. That is true, that no institution has adequate resources to operate, and we are talking about where we are coming from. So for this government to continue to say that they have given more resources than any other, then it means they need to put in some very stringent KPIs for their investigative body.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I want you to give me just the list. You said the 3 pillars under which this is done. On which of the pillars is leading Ghana to this very poor showing all the time?
Samson, almost all of them. When you talk about the issues around bribery is so predominant. And remember, it's in the public sector. This survey talks about the public sector.
Okay.
And we know the issues around procurement, the issues around independence of our institutions. And that is a no-brainer, very important. And then when you look at the issues around the independence of those institutions to be able to speak to, look at what is happening in the case of the special prosecutor. He has had cause to come out to lament and cry out for support.
Okay.
That is not good enough. And then the critical aspect is what leadership is showing out there by its actions. So we say the laws must be seen to be robust enough, because in most of the indicators, the law is looked at from a legal and a practice point of view, and Ghana falls short in many of these.
All right, thank you very much. Mary Ada is the Executive Director of the Ghana Integrity Initiative. That's the local chapter of Transparency International, the global watchdog that has been doing this project over the years. Dr. Akwete, thank you once again very much for your patience. So we end this discussion on this topic with you. From where you sit as a governance expert, same question to you. We are passing the laws and all, and yet we can't seem to make the slightest dent in the corruption fight in 4 continuous years, consecutive years. I understand we have a little challenge with Professor Dr. Akwete's line. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile we put Ghana first. And you have been listening to my guest. First, you heard Sami Jemfi, National Communications Officer of the NDC. Joseph Dindiok Penka is former Deputy Attorney General, Minister of Justice of the Republic. And just a while ago, you heard Mary Ada, Executive Director of the Ghana Integrity Initiative. It's Professor Dr. Akwete who will give us the very final word on this. This show is brought to you by the candid sponsorship of Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and close as a partner. MTN everywhere you go. Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 33 plus years. My Way Insurance, dial *165# on MTN to join My Way today. Syntex Tanks, it's strong, it's tough, and Flamingo Paints, simply superior. Do we have Professor Akwete back on the line? Dr. Akwete back on the line? Okay, so unfortunately we don't have Dr. Akwete on the line. When we return, we would be asking the question about whether or not elections should be moved to November. The NDC has 11 reasons why that should not be done now. They say the EC is too late in bringing up this discussion. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. And there is some breaking news about the revocation of the appointment of certain DCEs by the president, and in a letter under the hand of the president himself. That tells you how serious it is. Dated February 2, 2024. That is a letter of revocation of the appointment of certain DCs that you can see. So as we scroll up, you see the names of those who have lost their DCE positions. But whilst that scrolls up, I'm going to be sharing with you those who have been appointed to replace those, nominated to replace those who have been kicked out. For Ahafwano North, Prince Doma Amwa Amansia West, Oscar Asare Ando, Dr. Amwating Augustine Kwesi for Nkoranza South, Mohammed Haruna for Pru East, Samson Bolu for Sene East, Moses Ahemfo Aqua for Ewutu Senya West, Nana Kweku Aban for Chifo Heman Lower Dentra, Mavis Opoku Akono for Esiojaman, Paddy Amponsa Douglas for Etiwa West, Professor Edward Asante Entry for New Jabing North, Owusu Arthur Emmanuel for Nsawam Adwejiri, Ebenezer Doku for Adentan, Ambrose Chega for Ga Central, Deborah Ampofo for Ga East, Michael Dankwa for Wejagbawe, Isa Chemsi Abdullahi for East Mamprusi, Bulato Kweku Patrick for Krachi West, Felix Owusu Jima for Nkwanta South, Jacob K. Dumakwawe for Sola Tuna Kalba, Agana Albert Akuri for Bolga East. The rest are Anania Daniel Atampuba for Boku West, Muhammad Foka for Sisala West, Zu Walter Wogbamesi for Adaklu, Innocent Linford Kwesi Tete for Southton, Alex Beidu for Amenfi Central, and Eric Essien for Nzama East. So these nominations are also under the hand of the president and copied to the minister for the ministry, local government and decentralization, rural development, to the vice president and the chief of staff. All right, so that's the breaking news for you. Could this be fallout from what has just happened in the last 2 weeks or so? Anyway, interesting. Will that also be a sign that for the ministerial thing, something should be expected, as has been rumored over a period now? Let's see how that goes. Now, let's talk about whether or not elections should be held in November. A very good idea, because if there is a runoff, yes, it's going to be such a big pressure on all of us. But is it the right time to do so? That, I suppose, is the question. And Joseph Dindiokwenka is with us. He's still here in the studio. We have Dr. Tanko Rashid Computer, Deputy National Director of Elections of the NDC. Habib Yakubu is Director of Elections of the CPP, joining us by Zoom. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thanks.
Thank you. So I suppose we can start with you. What's your view? What's it? Should it be done? Should it not be done? And if it should be done for 2024?
Well, Samson, you see, the posturing of the current Electoral Commission doesn't convince any ordinary Ghanaian or right-thinking Ghanaian to think that they can move the election from December to November. Now, you have lost some 7 years down the lane. Don't forget, in 2015, we, the political parties, put together a proposal and sent to the Electoral Commission that there's a need to move the election from December to November. Now, through the AG, the Attorney General, the Electoral Commission moved the motion in Parliament. And that was in June 2016. The NPP minority then, 95 of them, overwhelmingly voted against it in Parliament. It lost.
That one, it was just some disagreements that occurred, right? Because we understood that all the parties had agreed that it was going to be passed. That's why Maretta Brew came to Parliament to move it.
And that's why we're surprised.
And then all of a sudden,
they went against it completely.
Yes, but it means that the NDC supports such a position.
Yes, that was it. But the argument they advanced then, led by the current Deputy Speaker of Parliament, first Deputy Speaker of Parliament, he said it wasn't feasible, and that looking at the nature of the election that year, It wasn't feasible for Electoral Commission to do that. So it fell short. And then that's why it couldn't be implemented. 7 years.
Do you remember that was very close to the elections?
And that was in June.
That was in June?
Yes.
Yes.
It was in June. Now, 7 years down the lane, the Electoral Commission, knowing very well that when we have this thing, what we call a runoff, there's a pressure on them, as they used to say, then they should have started a process of sensitizing Ghanaians and the political parties that in 2020, we are going to move the election from December to November. Now, they didn't do that. After 7 years down the lane, then they woke up from the slumber. Don't forget, when we went to IPAC last 2 weeks, that was the time they brought that idea. Then we asked them, which political party wrote to you demanding that this time around the election should be moved? Because it was 2020, 2016 that we, the political party, wrote to you. This time around, you are telling us that you are only bringing back what the political party say. No, that thing did not exist again because it fell short. The political party shot it in parliament. The same NPP people who are moving this. So we want to find out which political party now wrote to you as of now. So it means it is not
the AEC Act because a political party is requesting what is ideal.
Yes, that's what they told us at the IPAC, that what they are bringing was the proposals that you, the political parties,
yes, so I'm saying
made.
that you are saying that they cannot on their own, so motu, raise the issue unless a political party kickstarts the situation, the process.
Of course, well, that's what we are saying. The argument was started by them. And the argument was that it was the political parties who muted this idea. And we said, no, the one we muted fell short in parliament because the constitutional...
Tell me seriously that this is not the reason you oppose it.
That is not the reason. Our reason was that, look, if you look at the DLE, the District Assembly election, that was conducted just recently, it was too shambolic. In fact, for a very long time, we've never heard of shortage of ballot papers in polling stations. It was in this current District Assembly election that we heard of ballot shortages. To the extent people went to vote and their names were not in the register. So we raised the issue about the register, the 2023 register, that there's a lot of problems. There are issues that we need to address in the register. Because the register you gave to us and we gave to our people in the constituency, when they check, and even voters who went to the polling station couldn't find their names at the polling station. It's unprecedented. And to the extent some regions, Ashanti and Eastern region, majority of the districts could not vote on the day of the voting, the 19th December. They had to postpone their vote because of logistical problems and all that. So with all this baggage you are having, and don't forget, this year they are going to do another registration, limited registration. So we asked them, at the time we're at the IPAC meeting, the Electoral Commission did not have the roadmap for the election 2024. They have not given us the roadmap. They have not given us their program of activities. We asked of it, and they told us that at the next IPAD meeting, they were going to make it available. The next IPAD meeting we went, up to now, they didn't have that. Just yesterday, that we saw on Daily Graphic paper, advertising for people to apply to become returning officers for the election 2020. Where did they get this? When you have not given the major political parties your program of activities that we are going to conduct. So, invariably, that's why I say they are posturing. Tell us that they are not even ready. For me, even the December 2024.
Just hold on a minute. And Yakubu, thanks for joining us.
Much, Samson, and thank you.
Good. So, yes, as we understand, the overwhelming consensus at the IPAC meeting was that the Electoral Commission's major electoral reforms must be implemented in 2028 and not in 2024. Is that the understanding you got, including for moving the elections into November 2024?
No. With regards to the elections being moved, the date being moved to November 7, 2024, I think there was a unanimous decision from the various political parties as stakeholders. We did not agree to that. We, in particular, the CPP, were very clear that the timeline is very short. There's no broader consultation from the Electoral Commission. If actually the Electoral Commission had this thing was engaged the Electoral Commission to finish the thing, like Dr. just said. But as After 2016, what happened? The Electoral Commission, did they go to sleep? And if they go to sleep, why actually bringing that within an election year? When the political parties have already drawn out their program. We, for instance, are yet to do some exercise at the electoral events and all those things. So, looking at November 7th, we said it was a challenging time for us to actually abide by. If we can stick to December, they can decide to shift the date 7th to any other particular date. For some people regarding religious matters and other things, that okay, they can decide to pick a day in December, if not necessarily 7th December.
Habib.
So we're clear on that.
Right, Habib.
Yes.
If the Electoral Commission has what it takes to get the November, calendar, to get a voting in November done by law, what is your problem? Why your opposition? If the EC says it's in November, are you saying there's not enough time for publicity for people to get used to the fact that we'll vote earlier than December? Is that a problem? What exactly is the problem?
Well, the problem is, one, is that there's lack of broader consultation. Secondly, the Electoral Commission itself, we as stakeholders are not privy to their calendar as we speak. There are lots of issues that have to be dealt with in terms of reopening of voter registration for people who did not get a chance to start. The activities of the Electoral Commission is not known down to us as zero political parties. We don't also know the capacity of the Electoral Commission. No, there are machines that were used in the last. That were we are so many challenges with things. So what is the Electoral Commission telling us without letting us know precisely what their capacity is?
Really? Okay, hold on for me. The NDC's Director of Elections, that's Dr. Mani Boama, right? He said the reasons why this should not be done now, not that it should never be done, include that the EC has waited for 7 years to pass since 2016 when it should have happened. That's something you have canvassed. He says that at the IPAC, if the political parties had accepted the November proposal, that would have meant that Ghana has only 8 months clear to prepare for the elections. 8 months, 9 months, really, is it not really 8 months that's preparation that we have? He says the Electoral Commission's calendar of programs and activities for the upcoming elections is not yet known and it's not ready, so it's not released. Then he insists that there ought to be sufficient stakeholder consultation. Why did the EC not introduce these discussions, adjustments, and amendments in 2017, 2018, 2019, or better still, why not after the 2020 elections? Then it's bringing it up now. It says you don't wait for an election year to introduce major electoral reforms, a year in which the EC has so much to do after an abysmal district level elections characterized by postponements and shortage of ballot papers, as has just been raised by Rashid. Also, the limited registration, he says, was chaotic. Then there's supposed to be another voters registration exercise that must take place this year. Because EC's calendar of activity is not ready, we are all left guessing, it says. Then frequent breakdown of EC equipment and network during limited registration exercise in 2023. And among the final points, he says that besides to vote for MPs in November, the EC needs amendment of the 1992 Constitution, according to Article 112, Clause 4. This amendment of a non-entrenched clause requires 2/3 of MPs to pass. Meanwhile, the MPs themselves must be in their constituencies for some part of this year campaigning, facilitating the registration of voters when the EC finally decides, not to think of the duration of the process and other germane issues the EC must bring to the front burner. So they want the EC to immediately release the calendar of activities for 2024 and then focus on the urgent important activities for December 2024 and perhaps push this to the next time. Panka, reasonable?
Well, you see, there's something that I think we've not looked at critically. I just want to draw the public's attention to it. And I want to find out, I'm very curious on this one. I've done a very keen observation on this matter, and I want to ask a lot of questions that may sound rhetorical. In 2012, do you recall that constituencies were created 3 months to elections? 3 months to elections. My constituency was one, Timpani. Major decision. 3 months to election, the Electoral Commission created constituencies. Again, if you look at the 2016 issue that we are talking about, 6 months to elections, they wanted a change in the date. But Samson, watch. In 2012, when that proposal for the creation was made, it was led by the then majority. And they supported the EC. It succeeded. In 2016, in June, very late, when the proposal for the 7th November was made, it was made in June. And again, the majority at that time supported it. I get the trend. I'm giving this analogy. Now, the current proposal, I'm not too sure. But you realize that straight away, those who were the majority at that time, when it was 6 months to elections and 3 months to elections and major decisions were taken, today are saying 8 months is too small. When 3 and 6 months at that time was considered sufficient. Is there anything that ruling parties benefit from these short dates that opposition will not get? That is the reason for this. Because if 9 months is insufficient, then certainly 6 months and 3 months should not be. That's even worse. But you supported that at that time. So is there any reason for this? That when you are in power and the Electoral Commission brings it, however short it is or inconvenient, you do approve of it. When you are not, then you are not in support, and etc. You see, for me, I am 100% in support of the decision to have elections held in November. But when is the decision of Ghanaians? When that should be implemented is the decision of all Ghanaians.
No, we want to hear from you.
You know,
implementing it for this year is not feasible.
If we have 9 months, 8 clear months, I think what I will buy a little from what my brother has said is the fact that they need to come out of their timetable, the EC. If they had done that and convinced all of us, and remember even that as we speak, it is mandatory by law and by decision of the Supreme Court that they should create SAL this year.
Yeah.
It's mandatory. And the fact is, we don't know whether they intend to create only SAL or they have intention for others. Again, if we wait till last minute and then we come up with another controversy.
They have debunked rumors that they intend to create any more beyond SAL.
No, I'm saying this because I'm saying this because I don't know whether I mean this rumor you're talking about, in all intent and purposes, will come to fruition, because look, they can change their mind at any time and decide they're going to create more anyway. And it is within their mandate so to do. And as I indicated to you in 2012, it was done. Look, we elected our parliamentary candidate for Garo Timpani, and then he was campaigning. And 3 months election, then Timpani was created. I remember that was when your constituency was equally created, Bolga East. You know, I mean, wait till last minute. Again, I agree with the argument that the reforms could have been done earlier. That argument makes sense to me and convinces me, because last year we could have initiated it. 2 years ago we could have initiated it. At times the election was far ahead, so that there are no controversies, and then we resolve it long ahead of time and etc. But we don't bring it into a crowded electoral calendar, you know, especially where there's no consensus. Because my fear is where there's no consensus, you go ahead to implement anything, it goes against a party, they raised alarm here and there, and there's fury. But we want to keep everybody together as a nation. So consensus building should be the watchword. But for me, I'm not against the 7th November.
And you think
because I think that my basic reason is we've had experience before. The transition. You go to this election in anticipation that somebody could win one touch.
You answer me that it is possible or it's not. Is it doable?
It's doable.
It's doable.
It's doable.
But there can be the amendment processes.
This should be initiated immediately, so that we can have it done within the next 1-2 months. All that is done, and we still have some clear months so that people can readjust to their programs. But you don't wait till last minute and come and impose it on people. They will raise questions and think that you are trying to connive with a particular political party to favor them, and etc. And when those questions are raised, then it brings to question the legitimacy of the outcomes itself. Okay. So I'm just pleading that IPAC should again meet immediately and see how they could actually resolve unanimously. But Samson, say it and say it loud. If there is a runoff, You go to do the election around 28th, 29th of December, and you have 7 or 8 days within which you do a transition. That is practically impossible. Practically impossible. So it makes sense to have November 7, but the discussions will begin
Article 112 clause 4 says that subject to clause 2 of Article 113 of this constitution, a general election of members of parliament shall be held within 30 days before the expiration of the period specified in clause 1 of that article, and a session of parliament shall be appointed to commence within 14 days after the expiration of that period. This is the provision Dr. Wani Boama says will have to be amended to allow for the process. This is where time allows us. Thank you very much. So as far as the NDC is concerned, you support it in principle, but not this time.
Yes, let me add this for want of time. Yes, we are strongly against the implementation of such a policy this year. In fact, at IPAC, all the political parties, and even Dr. Bosman Asari himself, agreed, and even his statement, that in principle, all the political parties agreed that such a proposal should be implemented in 2028, and not 2024.
Okay.
Because I just want my brother to know that in 2016, the process started in 2015, not 2016. It started in 2015, and then the vote was taken in June.
Okay.
So it wasn't in June that the process started. It was
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Tanko Rashid, Computer. Is that your name?
Yes, Computer is my name. It's my official name.
Computer?
Yes, and then
I've been thinking
a lot of people thinking that's an alias, but it's not alias.
It's not.
It's a full name. It's Tanko Rashid Computer. That is my official name.
Okay, and this computer means the computer we know?
Yes, the computer you know.
All right, Dr. Tanko Rashid Computer. He's the Deputy National Director of Elections of the NDC. Joined us on Zoom has been Habib Yakubu. He is Director of Elections for the CPP. And also here in the studio is Joseph Dindiok Kwenka, who is former Deputy Attorney General and Minister for Justice. Unfortunately, we lost Dr. Emmanuel Akwete and couldn't raise him back. Thank you also very much. I'm Samson Lardy Anyenini, and my outfit, as always, is by Habil's Couture. You can call them 0200 84 1988, 0200 84 1988. You find them at Ajiringano Gate, East Legon. Have a good afternoon. This has been Newsfile.